In Business Central, we have quite many documents and journals that relates to inventory or warehouse functionality. So with this video, we will try to show you a little overview of the differences depending on the combination of check marks you use in your location setup. Let's start by looking at what we could call basic functionality or not working with any setup on the location card. First of all, on the outbound side, we have a sales order as the primary document. Then we have a transfer order, an outbound transfer order, a purchase return order, and a service order. Those are all meant for outbound handlings. Be aware that the service order requires the premium license from Microsoft. On the inbound side, we have a purchase order as the primary document. Then we have an inbound transfer order and a sales return order. Those are all signals for the inbound side. Internally, we have the item journal, which is used for many different transactions, positive and negative adjustments if it's in the warehouse and inventory. We have the item revaluation journal for changing the cost value of items on stock. And then we have the bin creation worksheet and bin content creation worksheet. And those are both meant to do the setup on bins. And one could argue that those are not part of the basic functionality, but I've added it here because it's part of a setup if you're running warehouse. Assembly orders, you post consumption and output from an assembly order directly on the order. And you also have production orders, and be aware that production orders also require the premium license from Microsoft. And on the production order, we have production journal directly on the order for consuming items and outputting items. And then we have the consumption journal and output journal that does it separately besides the production order. Those are all documents and journal working with just what we call inventory, meaning no warehouse check marks on the location card. If we move on to what we could call simple functionality, meaning check marks on the location card that doesn't include the purchase received and warehouse shipment check mark, but the bin and the put away and pick, we will have on the outbound side an inventory pick, which is a document picking directly on the sales order, and it also applies to assembly orders and production orders. On the inbound side, we have the inventory put away, where it's possible to put item on stock, and it also applies to assembly order and production order. From the assembly order, you need to create it manually. We will show you that in other videos. Internally, you have the physical inventory order, which is an order document for doing inventory countings, where you can place or calculate the counting on an order document, and then you can do physical inventory recordings. So you can do an inventory count in many different recordings and add them to the counting and post it. We have the internal movement, which is meant to create inventory movement. So the first one is like a little journal functionality, and it creates inventory movement for making controlled movement on inventory. Then we have the item reclassification journal for reclassifying items, moving items, etc. And we have the physical inventory journal, which is used for counting inventory. So those are all documents and journals if you work with simple check marks on the location card. Moving further on to the advanced check marks, the warehouse documents, we could call it. We have on the outbound side the warehouse shipment and the warehouse pick, which are only used if you have the shipment check mark on the location card. And we also have the pick worksheet that you can create warehouse pick with. And those also apply if you use production order and assembly order, even though it's some kind of manual process to create the warehouse pick. Likewise, on the inbound side, we have the warehouse receipt and a warehouse put away. And the put away could be created from a put away worksheet or from the warehouse receipt. And it also applies to assembly orders and production orders. There's no journals in the advanced functionality, meaning that the advanced functionality we saw before is using all the journals that are also used in simple and basic functionality. But in the VMS functionality, meaning if you set the big check mark, as we call it, the directed put away and pick check mark on the location card, you will have functionality that applies only when that is placed. And that's the warehouse internal pick, which is a manual functionality for creating a warehouse pick without a source document. Likewise, there's a warehouse internal put away. Then you have the movement worksheet, which is a worksheet for creating warehouse movements. that are controlled movements on your inventory. And then around the item journal, we have an warehouse item reclassification journal that looks a little like the item reclassification journal, but it applies only on warehouse entry level. We have a warehouse item journal for doing positive and negative adjustment. And then after that, posted in the item journal. Then we have the warehouse physical inventory journal, where you can also count on the inventory, and then afterwards posted in the item journal. So those are documents that applies only when you have the directed put away and pick checkmark. Overall, there's quite a few documents and journals working with inventory and warehouse in Business Central.